who's thinking about applying for the internship? Great. And is anybody considering the 300-hour next year with us?
Erica's like, do it.
Okay, cool. 20 questions is over. Have fun tonight.
It's not even time to start, technically,
Oh, well, okay.
but we can. Is everyone ready? I'll give you 2 minutes later then. We'll end at least 2 minutes early. Good at home? Woo! I'm generous that way. 2 minutes. I'm a Virgo. I'm very precise. I'm like, I will give you 2 minutes. We will, and you might get more. Who knows? But at least 2. And hi, friends in the car and at home. Good to see you. Erica's with us tonight. There's the wonderful Erica. Okay, so. Okay, so what's happening tonight? Tonight we are doing, and I'm going to tell you, this is not a night with a lot of movement. There's none, really. But the danger of that is you get tired, and around 8 o'clock, or who knows, maybe if you're feeling like I am today, around 6:15, in about 15 minutes, you're going to be like, yeah, exactly. So I just want to encourage you before we hop in, if you need to move around, move around. If you need to, like, even just whatever, it's not break time and you need to just move or take a walk or go get a drink of water or whatever, take care of yourselves. Hi, Erin. Sorry, I'm talking early. I'm letting you out 2 minutes early. Nothing important. You didn't miss anything. I just said, like, I'm talking a lot and they're talking a lot and you're talking a lot tonight. So move around if you need to move around. Okay, so seat of the teacher is kind of like meant to be the talk and the discussion where we get a little yoga philosophy and apply it in a way that's like, how do you apply some yoga philosophy as a yoga teacher to help you to take that seat of the yoga teacher, right? And then it also has this like real practical side, like what do you do if this happens? What, talking about fears of new teachers, just trying to hopefully set you up so that, it's your first class is going to be, unless you are, I don't know, like I don't know, unless you handle things in a very different way than most people, you're going to be scared your first class. You're going to be nervous, and that's very normal. If you're not, great. But but hopefully tonight I can give you a few things that you can just kind of like, put in the back of your mind, and that will support you as newer teachers and hopefully throughout your teaching career. Hopefully this is just the beginning of a very long journey and a lifetime of learning about yoga and how to share yoga and all of these cool things. So all of that being said, and I am getting used to bifocals. Does anyone else wear bifocals? Are you? Not yet. It happened to me this year. It happened, I'm not kidding, overnight. I woke up and I'm like, I can't see up close with my glasses. And I'm like blinking. And I was like, did you say you have bifocals? No.
But I was saying that's a mind game, I imagine, adjusting.
Oh, it's such a trip. So if I'm making weird faces at you, I want to assure you that I am making weird faces, but it's because of this situation. I'm trying to get used to them and I'm trying to make myself wear them. So, okay. What I'd like to do is for check-in tonight, where did my pen go? We'll go around and we will, for your check-in topic tonight, and if there's anything else you want to share too, that's great. But what I'd really like to know, so is there anything you want to talk about tonight or address, or the questions you have around what do you do if this happens in class? Or I'm nervous about this with teaching yoga. Or what are some other, like, just, kind of just that whole, like, what's on your mind? What, is there anything like that you'd like me to address? You might not have anything, but usually, like, I can give you some examples. Because I write notes every time, and my notes, this thing turns into such a mess. Afraid of forgetting the sequence. What do you do if your mind goes completely blank? Things like that, confidence, all of that sort of stuff. So just, take a few seconds here and think about what is something you want me to cover tonight. And I will write it down. A lot of it will come up. Generally, it tends to come up, don't you think, in what we do anyway?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I don't know. Yes. She's like, what are you gonna ask me? The way I did that was weird, huh? Okay, so yeah, just like a lot of it gets covered anyway, but I also want to make sure I address anything. I wanted to remember this. A few weeks ago, I was with Extended Format doing this section, and someone had I hope I remember, they had one of the best questions that I have never, ever, ever heard. And that's so rare. I'll look at my notes at home because I still have them, and I'll let you know if I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm just teasing you with the fact that you may never know. It was the best question. So let's start with that. And I think I would love it if Zoom friends could start us out. I'm going to switch the view. And Sarah June, your little sweet face just popped right up. Would you start us out with your check-in?
Hey, friends. I'm doing good. I think I'm just studying the cues and trying to get caught up with homework. But I'm feeling pretty darn good.
Do you have any questions or areas you want me to address tonight?
Yeah, of course. What am I gonna do when I forget the sequence?
Okay. Forget sequence. Okay. I'll be sure to address that. You will, and I like you said when. And here's why. You will. I mean, I'm not saying it to scare you. You won't forget the whole thing. But am I okay? You will forget. You will have moments where you're like, did I just do the right side? Did I just, you're gonna have moments like that. So we'll talk about that tonight. Thank you so much. Okay. Christina, are you in a place where you can check in?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can.
Okay, cool. I'll probably turn my camera off here soon for bandwidth's sake. But yeah, I'm doing okay. I wish I was there with you guys tonight. I'm just you guys know I'm moving on Friday.
Oh, you just froze up. We heard moving on Friday. Maybe go ahead and turn the video off, and I think we'll be able to hear you.
Better?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'll just keep my video off. Yeah, I was just saying I'm moving on Friday, and
It keeps cutting
as
out.
far as, dang it, I can hear you fine. I'm good. I'm done. Okay.
If you get somewhere safe and you can type in any questions, I'll still get to them. Okay. I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. But be safe, whatever you're doing, and we're glad you can hear us, even if we really wish we could hear you. But okay. And Erin.
Hello, everybody. I got some exciting news this morning that I have a place to teach once I graduate. Here in Canyon City, I'll be sharing the space with one other teacher, so we'll be alternating, I think.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Questions other than that? I don't know. What do you do if nobody shows up?
Or possibly more awkwardly if one person does.
Yeah.
But I'll get that also. The great question. Thank you so much, Erin. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
To tell my cousin just moved back to Canyon City. She lived there forever and she went away for a couple of years and just moved back. So I'm gonna get more information about that from you.
Okay.
All right, now let's see. Do we want to pass this around? Do you mind having it right in your face when you're talking? I think that's nice. All right, let's go ahead that way.
Hello, guys. I'm doing great, and I think my question is, how do you manage, what did I say? I'm nervous about the emotional energy it takes to be a yoga teacher. So how
It
to,
does take it too. Just have to get your.
Don't touch me with your feelings. I'm doing well, just trying to mentally wrap my mind around Saturday. My main question and concern, and this might not be the arena to talk about it, but I work at a retreat center, and in like 3 weeks, I'm supposed to teach a group of women who are average age of 70, and I'm scared a hip is gonna go out or something, and I just don't know how to adjust to that. And then the week before I might teach teenagers. So it's just that adapting to the space and to the abilities of the people in front of me that I'm a little concerned about, which again, this might not be what we talk about tonight, but.
I'll just answer you now.
Oh, answer me now, great.
I mean, generally you just teach the class that's listed, but sometimes you're
Mhm.
making changes all the time. Always make sure that you have really thoroughly, especially if you're working with a special population, like teens or people 70 and above, that you've just done good research.
Okay,
Our whole sequence can be done on chairs.
okay, the whole thing.
Right? Like, one of my favorite, here, warrior two. I was thinking that too.
Okay,
And
cool.
Utkatasana. Inhale, halfway lift, exhale, forward fold. Not chaturanga, but forward fold, come back up, neutral. Here's your up dog or cobra.
Okay,
So you can
fascinating.
literally do it all this way for those who need it.
Yeah, okay, that's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, online guys. I'm pretty confident for the Saturday, especially after our family and friends day, because that was just like that nice getting the jitters out session. Oh, we can't see my face. Questions. So if we go to different studios, would we have to cater to what they want us to teach, like teaching their sequence, or could we stick, or does it kind of depend on where you go?
I will answer that one right now.
Okay.
If it's like specific and it doesn't come up later, I'll just answer as you go around. So it depends. If you were teaching the why, the sequence you learned, you could just use that.
Okay.
And you could alter it. If you were teaching, so most places, what you've learned is going to be a great start. Now, for power, they'll make you, and they make their own students go through this before you teach. You have to go through. They have a word for it, but it's a special class that you pay for. And they have a specific sequence. Other places are generally going to, you generally audition. It's rare you teach a full hour at an audition, but most places, they will support you to get you where you need to be for what they want. But yeah, like a lot, like climbing gyms, things like that, like everything you've learned is gonna be great. And what I found too is people who go teach at other studios, those studios, not always, but a lot of times they. I'm gonna back up out of that. They learn a lot. It goes both ways. The learning goes both ways. That's what I want to say. Yeah. So, and I didn't mean that to sound, it sounded like I was going to say something bitchy and I wasn't. I really did want to back out of that because I don't mean anything bitchy, but I mean, they usually are like, oh, wow, your teachers or your graduates are amazing and they're doing amazing stuff. So I really want you to hear that. Like anywhere you go, and we've had people teach all over the world, not just the country. And all the time I'm hearing from people how glad they are that they did this training because they're starting out at a place that not every training gets people to. So you are going to be, you're not going to feel prepared. It's like Diane and she brought up in our our last mentor meeting, which I know you were in, but it's like your first day, you're never going to feel ready for. And you might not even your third class or your fourth or your fifth, but there's some learning you can only do on the job. And that's the only place you can do it. Am I telling the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Hi. I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm good. I just woke up from a nap, so I'm like a little sleepy still. But good. There was a shooting last night, like right in Manitou, like right next to my work, and it was like really jarring. And like last night it was just really full of like, there was just a lot of anxious people at work because somebody got fired, and like, so I've just been trying to like be like, okay, leaving work where work is, and just trying to de-stress a little bit. But other than that, I'm doing all right. My question, so in our mentor meeting the other day with Laura, I was talking about like, I've been like kind of gifted like a space to use throughout the week to teach. And I was talking to Laura about like, I want to make it, donation based. And because we had talked about like not doing classes for free. Because my partner and I had a discussion about like, should I do it for free? Should I not in the beginning? And then Laura was like, absolutely not. Don't do it for free. But I was talking about having like, you can give money, you can give like a piece of fruit or a vegetable, like something, and Laura was saying like, yeah, that's a great idea. But then I thought after the meeting, of course, like what happens if somebody really is just like, I can't afford anything, like, I'm sorry, like, how do you go about that conversation? Because okay.
Here we got trade opportunities too. But yeah, I mean, you'll just have to figure that out on your own. I honestly have never had that. I mean, generally someone could pay 25 cents. Or if you're gonna do other exchange type items, it's, but if that's really the case, and it could be, you just have to kind of decide how you're gonna work on that. And if they really can't, I still want them doing yoga. So yeah, I would talk to them and figure it out. And just, there are people who will be very good and honest, and there are people who will take advantage of that too. Unfortunately, most people don't. But yeah. That's exciting though. Good luck with that.
Thanks. I'm really nervous because word's like already getting around and people keep being like, so I hear you're teaching yoga classes. And I'm like,
Who knows? Yeah, I'm doing well. My main question is around, and we talked about this with Erica on Sunday, about how to best deal with I don't know, like sensory overwhelm, there's just like a lot going on, I'm pretty introverted. I get like, if there's a lot going on, I'm just like processing power moves a little bit slowly. And, if you have like ADHD or something like that, it's like, I know some of it is just kind of general skills that, we use in the rest of the world, but do you have any like very specific actionable like tips? So yeah.
I will get to that more later.
Awesome. Hi. I'm doing good. Ready for Saturday.
I have a lot of questions, actually. I just, like, one of my questions is actually what Maggie asked too, is like, how do you manage your emotional energy as a yoga teacher? Because I know the time will come where, and I have a tendency to pull inward. I'm very introverted. And so sometimes I like worry that I might get so exhausted. And so how do you manage that? Because I do care about people and I want to help people, but I don't want to get so tired that I'm like feeling incapable of it, So that's a big one for me. And then another one that I had, I'll just stick to like two right now. So so another question that I had, because I come from a medical background, I always think about injuries and stuff too. So, like as a new yoga teacher, like we don't know a lot about how to help people with their injuries, and we're not physical therapists, but I know there are modifications that you can take in a lot of poses, and maybe some we learn from experience, some we learn from reading and studying. But what if someone comes to you and they're like, well, I have this injury, and like, I don't know how to move through class and not like exacerbate it. And what if, and it's like, yeah, I'm just like, what if you just don't know the answer, Okay.
So it's up to you.
Okay.
I don't feel like I can necessarily say, do you feel like you have recommendations from your doctor or your physical therapist?
Okay. Okay.
And if not, then they need to get a hold of Eric and find out.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you're worried about injury or things like that, or I used to teach the Monday 5:45 power, and I had a lovely gentleman who wound up being my student until the day he died, literally. But he came in almost 90 years old to power, and I didn't let him take power. I mean, it just was not appropriate on any, and it's not ageism. It was just clearly, this is not safe. Like, and I asked him questions, and his doctor just said, go do yoga. So then we got him in gentle and did chair stuff, and he and his wife were a lot of fun. But so it's okay. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that if you see someone with gray hair and you're like, this is a flower class. Yeah, then you're gonna, if you're in my studio, we're gonna have to talk. Because we can't assume people can't do things, but there's also a line where clearly, and same with injuries. If you're just like, I don't even know what this means. One, you can ask them more questions. Say things like, did your doctor tell you what movements you should avoid? And then I mean, that's part of it too. If you have time to talk to them, you might be able to, if they're like, okay, hey, I've been told not to do back bends, then you just know, okay, we're going to be doing back bends in here. I'm going to have you just not do them when we do them. And I'll do my best to let you know. That kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, good question on that.
Thank you.
We're just saying questions, or I forgot the first part.
Concern or question you have about when you start teaching?
I don't really have any questions that are coming to me. I know I was thinking the other night though, I feel like I just have been wanting to know more about how you and Austin like started Cambio and like what, because I feel like I don't actually know, and I just am very curious.
How about if I have time, I will
Okay.
add that in. Like, what? How is this?
Yeah.
Like, literally, I sometimes don't know how that happened.
Oh,
How about I tell you a quick thing? I had a dream years before it happened that I was standing on one of these cliffs over in Palmer Park looking at this area. Well, this building, we used to buy Christmas trees at when we were kids.
Whoa.
Like at the downstairs space, they sold Christmas trees. And I had a dream, someone was doing Kundalini yoga up there with me, and they did all this magic on the building and turned it into like a yoga center. Forgot about the dream, totally, but years later, I was at my mom's house going through some stuff I'd left there, and I found this dream written down and stuck in a book. And I was like, Mom, let me read you something. And she was like, oh, and she's like, so it did like, and that's how life works though. I think we just, we plan and we do the best we can, and there's also just a plan that we're a part of. So.
That's so cool. That is so crazy. Aaron, I like your background.
She looks like an angel.
She's got the divine. My question would be, what about disruptions, talking like a student asking a lot of questions during class? Me and Sarah June were in a class here a while back, and the guy was, I think he was a new student, or at least new to Cambio, and he kept asking or talking throughout the class as if there wasn't a class going on. I don't know, but the teacher handled it amazingly.
One
But
of the best tricks, I heard Austin do this not too long ago, is, all right, let's get to our Ujjayi breath. We breathe through our nose.
Your mouth is shut.
And so,
zip the
I mean,
lips.
depending on how well you know the student, sometimes you can tease them a little and it's just fun. But sometimes it's like, it's a reminder. And it also, we'll talk about this. You want to address the elephant in the room as appropriately as possible, so your other students know you've got it covered. So you might not always be able to take care of the situation, but you can at least, if they know you're doing your best, it takes a lot of, they're not like, oh my goodness, is she gonna let this just go on and
I
on?
know.
Is she, is she aware that this is disruptive?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll talk.
Yeah,
we'll go into that.
I figured. Yeah. There you go.
Hey. Oh my gosh. I feel like everyone's asked every question that I have thought of, and now I don't have a question. I think my only question to kind of bounce off Sarah, I guess, would be like, how do you handle a rude student? Because I feel like in some industries, especially being a server, you're taught that they're always right and that you just need to be respectful. But I feel like in some instances, especially as a yoga teacher, it's important to hold people accountable for their actions, especially if they're bothering another student or, I mean, you. So how, I guess, like, what's an appropriate way to approach that? And I know it varies like situation by situation, but you know.
I think when we get to Sutra, we'll be getting to Sutra 1.33 today. I think there's some stuff in there that will support you with that.
Okay.
But also, and I mean, it does happen. Every now and then it does happen. And I mean, there's kind of this mix of things. It's the person where they just completely in traffic and they're stressed, and yes, they're being rude, but they didn't like, is it a place to teach a lesson, or is it a place to just be like, get them in the room, let them do some yoga, and they're going to be a different person in an hour? Right?
Let the medicine do its work.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just they're uptight and they're just tense, but that also doesn't mean you don't get to have boundaries for how you were treated and how other students certainly are treated. So we'll get into that quite a bit more with 1.33.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Guys, I'm doing good. I'm super excited for Teach Out. I'm just so proud of everybody. And I guess my question would be along the lines of confidence, like as a like self-confidence, and then also like how to really, because I still kind of see myself as a student, like and so it's hard, like how do I step into the role of seeing myself as a teacher and feeling authentic to teach others, I guess would be my question.
We'll get into that stuff a little more too, but first thing I want to say is it's just a matter, part of it's just doing it.
Yeah.
Just because it takes a while for that, you know, just that feeling of oh, do I deserve to be here? It can take a while for that to go away. But just remember this, you always are a student.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's actually a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Like kind of embrace that. Like, oh, I'm on this path of learning to teach, and learning to teach has no end point.
Right.
So
I'm always a student.
I'm always going to be the student.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Right.
Yeah. And we'll get into that.
Awesome.
Hi guys. Well, I'm fine. I don't really have a question because pretty much, you know, every question that everyone has posted here. Those were good questions and things that I would ponder about, or I thought, oh, I didn't think about that. And I guess I would think like the same thing, you know, Liz, like, you know, moving in from being a student, but that's a great way to think of it. You're always a student, and that too, but you're also on the journey to always learning and incorporating what you learn into being a teacher. So I thought, in listening to everybody here, I thought my plan would be to and I kind of feel confident about the teach out, but I'm just going to do it. Just do it. And then I thought like I would do the internship and then just really in like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, kind of let the dust settle and kind of hit going out and seeing what's available as far as teaching and just go in.
Not of it too. And I'll say this, because this won't come
Go
up.
for it.
You can make opportunities, and those are if you want the best money you can make are the opportunities you make yourself. Best money I made hourly teaching was when I taught in elementary school, and I had classes after school for my fellow teachers. And I had a sliding scale, and I had all this other stuff, but
Okay.
teaching in schools, reach out to school districts. Like if you want to really get out there and teach, so many people want yoga, but you've got to hustle a little and not just expand, not just rely on, like think outside the box. Don't just think gym, yoga studio. Like go get opportunities for yourself.
I thought one opportunity I was going to do, because everyone knows I have a horse here, and I was telling Sarah this, that I'm moving my horse with my trainer to another barn. And there is yoga with horses, or equestrian yoga. So a person who taught it up in Castle Rock, she writes and she created this book. So I thought I would talk to her and borrow from her and do lessons. You know, and also benefit my trainer as well in the people in my barn.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can go beyond the pockets of what you know, but you can also already just work in the pockets of, like with me working with other educators made a lot of sense. I've known people who worked with
Yes, and you know, we have summer camp, everyone,
firefighters.
base camp afterwards, right? School for the kiddos.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All of you guys could do that. Kids are pretty.
Yeah, you might want to do
Pretty-
like at
pretty
least a little
forgiving.
training for kids. But you can, I feel like you can really teach kids,
Yeah.
especially on the job. That's how I started.
Teaching on the job?
Teaching kids yoga, no, just teaching kids.
Just
yoga
kidding.
For adults. I love kids, but it is exhausting an hour in a room with people who are anywhere from 5 to 12. Oh, yeah.
That is a lot.
Hi guys, I'm
Good. I don't know, I guess if I had a question, it would maybe be if I accidentally cue the wrong pose, how do you come out of that? Improvisation. Yesterday when I was practicing, I was leading a practice for my best friend. And after camel to neutralize, I cued happy baby. I was like, but bring your arms behind you. And she was like, wait, what? And I was like, oh, I meant child's pose. Like, yeah.
Oh, with
So-
those two, I mean, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
little kids.
Yeah. But very different at the same time. She's like, how do I do that? I'm like, I don't know.
Just do what I mean, not what I say. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I won't be here on Sunday or Saturday either. But I just know, like, we did an info session last night, and like I just thought of you all, and it was like where you were 12 weeks ago, and it was like you have come so far. So just like, oh, bathe in this last week. I wish I could go back to my last week, which is why I'm here.
I miss so coming back to my last week. Okay, let me just get my Zoom here. And I will move this so that you can, now, if you want to write notes in your manual, it's section 2.7, page 55. This stuff I wrote up here is typed out for you in the manual, but you can also try to read my handwriting. That's another thing, since I don't teach kids anymore, I feel like I'm allowed to have real sloppy handwriting. Because I had to like restrain myself for so long. I'll help you, I'll help you. At home, are you okay? We could maybe type some in if you need support with it. You would like that? Or you're okay? I don't know what the thumbs up meant. You're good, okay.
I'm good.
Oh, good. Christina was able to type in medical emergency. Okay, I'm going to read you Christina's, everyone. Hi, friends. Sorry I can't be there in person with you all tonight. As you know, I'm leaving on Friday, but a bunch of my plans are falling through, and now I'm running around putting out fires. LOL. I'm feeling good about the sequence, just catching up on some homework. My question would be how to handle medical emergency during class. Oh, they like that one. They don't like it, but they like it. We don't want that to happen, but you need to, yeah. That usually comes up later, but I'll write a note to myself just to be sure. Okay, so let's hop in. We ready to hop in? First, before I get into any of this stuff, who's watched the video that is on the Yoga Sutra? I think it's the second yoga tradition, history and tradition. So some of you have, some of you haven't, and that's okay. Have, okay. If you have, a little of this will be a little redundant. If you haven't, it'll be new, but it'll be a little redundant when you do it. But it is a part of yoga tradition to hear stories more than once, because A, you forget them. B, until you hear something about 10 times in yoga, I feel like you don't really integrate it. So really, the more you hear, like, I'm going to give you an analogy that I give in that video, you need to hear these things many times until they really, you know what I mean, just become a part of your fabric. It's like that idea, they give this example a lot in yoga of taking the fabric and dipping it in dye and pulling it out, and it's very pale at first, and each time you dip it in, it gets more and more vibrant, it saturates it more. And that's the idea with kind of traditional, a little bit of traditional teaching. Is very specifically to be a little redundant. I can't do this anymore. I did. How long? I made it. Now I can't see your faces. I'm gonna try. I'd rather see your faces, and I need to get used to them. So I'm gonna make it through the first half with them. All right. So And you may know this from the videos, what I say in the videos is traditionally the objective of yoga, but I'd really like to ask in any way, what is the goal of yoga? It could be your goal. It could be what you think most people's goal is. It could be traditionally the goal. Haley.
Traditionally, it's liberation from suffering.
Oh, no one has ever said that. No one's ever gotten that. Yeah. Were you able to hear at home? Liberation from suffering is the traditional, any of the Indian philosophies and traditions, whether it be yoga, the Vedic traditions, even Buddhism, Tantra, all the different traditions, typically at the heart is liberation from suffering. That's all. That's all. Just no more suffering. But that's pretty great, right? Because what's so empowering and cool about it is an idea that you can be liberated from it. You're gonna still go through things that suck, but here are some tools. And that's why yoga is so cool, because it's a practical philosophy. It's not just like, oh, what do we think happens? It's like, here's what I think happens, but try this. Don't just take my word for it. Like, go do these things. Well, Haley just, I've never had anyone. What are some other maybe less traditional ways, reasons for doing yoga? Like, what is your reason? And I know it can change day to day or even minute to minute, but what do you think are some that you'll hear from your students? Because they're probably not coming for liberation from suffering, although they really are.
I had somebody the other day be like, well, I just really need a good stretch.
I need a good stretch. Right.
But I mean,
there's more to it, but what a wonderful, I mean, I hate to say this, but the physical side is a wonderful back door that gets people into these practices that at first it's liberation from the suffering that tight, limited mobility and tight muscles cause, right? But then after a while, you're like, but I didn't yell at my kids after this thing happened, and I normally would have. No, it can't be the yoga. Right? But it like, it's so sneaky. It doesn't mean to be. I mean, yoga isn't in its nature, but it is this thing that I think a lot of times people very much will give you, your students will give you goals that are very physically driven at first. They want to make certain shapes with their body. They want to, like do handstand or touch their toes or look a certain way in their yoga pants, and they saw it on Instagram that if you, whatever the stuff is. But the cool thing is that stuff, it really, like when we are really teaching a great class, there are these moments where they are achieving liberation of suffering of other kinds. And you all know that's why you're here, right? That's why you want to share yoga with others, because you know that that's the essential nature of it, is there is some magic in it, that making these shapes and breathing this way, like it makes us feel better. It helps us when we're off the mat. It just starts to permeate our whole lives. And no, it doesn't. Very few of us probably are going to achieve total liberation from suffering, although I do hope it for you. I don't mean to knock you down if that's your goal. And like, you're like, next month, my goal, complete liberation. It's on my calendar. It's in my passion planner. I've got stickers for it. But because it actually, if it weren't obtainable, it wouldn't be a part of yoga. So I don't mean to also make fun of that or light of that, because it actually, it's how long does it take? Of course, we're talking about traditions where they believe in reincarnation. So they'll say this many lifetimes, and it's usually in the millions. And they're like, oh, but it says, or with an act of grace. So like there's some story, and I can't remember, like a student asked the teacher how many how long will it take? And they're like, see the leaves in the tree. And then the student's like, yeah. And the teacher is like, well, as many leaves in that tree or lifetimes you need. And the student just like has this moment of completely accepting that, and the leaves fall off the tree and they become enlightened. Right? So there's these, it's always this kind of like, don't get too discouraged, because your leaves falling out of the tree might just be right around the corner too. I went off topic. Yeah, but it's such a good point. The stretching I love. Or people say stress relief. Well, that's liberation from a certain kind of suffering. People, it's very rare when we look under it, there's not a call for a release from suffering beneath the reason. Even if they're like one of those people who are you're very not going into the depths. They're like, I want a yoga butt, whatever the thing is. And you're just like, ah! But there's still, you have to hear in that. And I say this because you're going to hear students tell you things that might make you kind of like, but recognize that underneath that is a desire for a relief from suffering, because they believe the way they look now is creating suffering. Yeah. But the more they do yoga, the more they're going to connect with that truth that tells them, no, that's not what, that out there, even if I achieve this, it doesn't bring lasting happiness of any kind. That stuff's ephemeral. That stuff just, you might have a moment of feeling like great when you put on your jeans or whatever, but it doesn't mean you don't suffer. And yoga will get to them on those levels. So even when you hear things that might make you cringe, and I think you probably will if you teach enough yoga, and it might be your own friends, and it's okay. It's just, as long as they're not then teaching yoga and doing it like, here's why we do yoga, because we want to look a certain way. Then you're like, ah! But because it is, that happens out there too. But I don't think as much in our real world as it does in the social media world. Okay, let's talk. I'm going to come back to that liberation from suffering, because it is the goal. And I think it's in a lot of ways really can be this really beautiful goal for you as a yoga teacher, to think about, can I give my students even just a brief glimpse of that today? And they may not even be aware they're getting that glimpse, but it's there, and it's why they come back. Like, can I gift them with a moment of liberation of suffering? And what's cool in yoga, every step into the light, it can never be undone. So even these slivers of liberation can never be taken from us. They are always, well, I'll get to that a little more in 1.2. So I think we should have these really kind of like high-minded ideals for ourselves as yoga teachers. And then there's the reality, which is sometimes just like, I just want them to get through class safely. But I do think we want to keep some yoga philosophy underpinning our objectives. So Sutra 1.1, this is from the Yoga Sutra. It's anywhere from 1500 to 2500 years old. Lots of debate on how old it is. Patanjali compiled it, and it is meant to be taught through commentary, and traditionally that was through a teacher, right? And the teacher, like I have a teacher who talks about like these texts like this, they're like each little aphorism or shloka is like this short little, it's like this tight bud that you need a teacher to open, right? Or great commentary too, to open for you. So this is about how to get that liberation through yoga practices. He doesn't go into what the yoga practices are. There's not a lot of that. It's not an instructional manual. It's very much it's very philosophical, and then it's assumed the teachers then are providing practices and things that go with it. The thing about Patanjali is he really throws you right in the deep end and is like, start here, and you're like, but I can't do that yet. And so it's like, okay, if you can't do that, then let's break that down into more steps, and you do these steps. Oh, I'm not ready for that. I have not grown up in a culture where I sit and I meditate for hours a day since I was little, right? So I need even more steps. And so he's just kind of giving us more and more steps until we get to a point where your average Westerner might be able to hang on barely. So the first sutra, Atta Yoganushasanam, and I should have a line above. Yoganushasanam, that's a longer A there. Atta, and this, I'm not going to do that way. I'm going to do that way. Okay, Atta means now. And this sutra doesn't sound like much, and there's some debate as to whether it is much. It was very common for any sutras. There's the Shiva sutras, there's different sutras where they'll begin with now begins, like a declaration of here we go, we're gonna do this thing. And it just means now the teachings of yoga begin, is one way you could translate that. And I think, I don't remember if the translation's in your manual or not, but, and so it's like, well, so what? Well, but Patanjali wrote this little tiny text. It's only 196 aphorisms, these little short statements. And they are so compact and tight. Like I said, like a little tight bud that needs to be opened. There's really nothing by chance in here, right? So there's this 2-level thing that's happening. First, now begins the study of yoga. Is kind of like this, like, hey, wake up. How lucky are you? Like, and remember again, culturally, we're talking about traditions that believe in many lifetimes. So it's like, not only did it take every second of your life to lead to you being right here, right now, it took every second of your parents' lives for them to even meet and have you, and their parents' lives, and you go back throughout all history, but then you add into that for them reincarnation and what it takes for you to finally be at a point to get to learn about yoga. Wow. And that's just cool. So it is meant to be a little bit of a, hey, wake up, realize where you are and how amazing that is. The other level, and I do believe and most of my teachers are really on the belief that no word goes to waste. No shloka, no aphorism goes to waste. So in this first sutra, Atta Yoganushasanam, let me take this a step back. It's all written in Sanskrit. That's what this language is, okay? Sanskrit is not a label of a thing. Like amber is my label. The vibration of the word amber is not the same as me. So in yoga, it's important to realize that the belief of how we come into existence, it starts at a very subtle level and it gets grossified, densified until boom, there you are in a human body, right? And your name's Andrea and you're like, here I am. But it's that finer level stuff that then becomes vibration and then slowly materializes. But on a more subtle level, it's vibration, and Sanskrit is the vibration of the thing itself. So before we have now, the moment now, we actually have vibration. Atta is the vibration of now. And so this word is said to be a blessing, much like Om, and I'll explain to you how it's similar to Om too. It's said to be a blessing like Om. And so he starts basically, and it's like, well, let me go back to the Sanskrit. So everyone go ahead and just say, Now notice what your body does when you say, Yeah. Right? This little lift, and then say, What did you feel? Yeah, right? Listen. Yeah, you feel this, And so we have this, and that's, again, it's no coincidence. It's the is like the creation. And then there's this little pause at the top, right? That's life. That's sustenance or sustaining, the sustaining force. And then that's release. That's death. That's going back into it. So in this little word, we have the whole cycle of life. I'm going to give it about 30 seconds. Everyone at home, how are you doing? Good? Okay. A similar word is om, and it has the same thing. Pardon me. Is that lift? Ooh sustains, and drops off. So it's another sound that has everything within it. Yes, Shanti is the vibration of peace. So therefore, that's why Sanskrit's so important when you're pronouncing it, to get it as closely as you can, not just to be respectful, but also because when you're vibrating the word peace, when you're saying Shanti, 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 you are literally, you're bringing that into you. You're vibrating that through you. Right? Haley's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yes, because that's how I feel about it. It's huge. It's powerful. It's really powerful. I have a question. Okay, I've got a question from Diane, and then I think we'll take a little short break.
So Shanti is a vibration of peace.
Yeah, the word Shanti means vibration, or means peace.
It doesn't totally vibration.
It doesn't mean it. Let's take a break and we'll come back. So I'm just not. Let's come back in 5 or 6 minutes. So at 7 o'clock. Okay. You good? All right.
Sorry, I mean, this is when Haley and Liz just mentioned.
I'm sorry, I can't. What was that?
When Haley and Liz just mentioned this, Shanti, my question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I just want to answer it. We'll just take, it's a good time for a break anyway. It worked out perfectly. So I did. All right, let's do some pulling prana to get started. Hands overhead, palms forward, belly moves a lot. Inhale, and just find your own pace. Really visualize you're pulling that prana down through your head. Do about 4 more, and then just rest with your eyes closed. Let the prana, let the energy integrate. All right, step 2, make a fist. You can tuck your thumbs in at your belly. You're going to inhale and hold till you're ready to breathe again. Don't go with what I say because it could be all wrong. So go ahead and inhale. Close your eyes and just hold. Know that this movement helps with focus, with attention, with one-pointedness. And then whenever you're ready, you'll let it go and you'll just, again, bring your hands down and let it integrate. Notice, how did that change you compared to the first breath practice? Right? So you're like your own little laboratory. There's no right or wrong. You're just noticing. And then we'll do the last one. So we're not holding. It's not a real long hold. All right, hands out in front of you, palms up. You'll hold the breath again, and this time just pull the prana in. So inhale, hold the breath, and you just go. You don't want to go to the point as you're pulling the prana in. You don't want to go to the point where you feel like you're going to get dizzy or anything like that. It's just a gentle practice, but you're still visualizing pulling that prana in. And then when you're ready to breathe, let your hands come down. Let it integrate. That again that's Amy Weintraub, who does yoga for depression and anxiety. Okay. That always changes the room. And it's not just because it got quiet over there. Although maybe it is. I'm gonna take credit with our little yoga practice we just did. Yeah, Amy Weintraub. Yeah, it's Weintraub, I believe. Great. I got to do some of my yoga therapy training with her. I have not read her book, but she has a training called Life. Oh, she doesn't own her training anymore. Someone else took it over, but it's Life Force Yoga. Are you familiar with it?
Well, I got the book. I haven't read it yet.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I did a training and it was fantastic.
Yeah,
What's that?
I've seen her name like pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
It's kind of, I was sad she left her train. I'm happy for her because she sold it. Now she's writing novels, I guess. Cool. All right. So we got through one sutra. And not even really. Let me get Diane's question. Make sure. Okay, I did not pause the recording, so we're still recording. The question was, so Shanti, will you just say it again?
Well, just in listening to Haley and Liz.
I'll repeat it.
Shanti and peace, and you on the vibration of
Mhm.
Shanti. Can you use, so my question is, can you use that in a meditation or as part of a meditation?
Yeah, can you use Shanti in a meditation or part of a meditation? Because it is the vibration of peace, right?
That's what,
So heck yeah. Yeah.
can you use that to someone who want to have to bring down into a meditation?
Can you Shanti them?
And they're having a moment, yes. Can you use that vibration?
So let me get the question straight. And let me make sure I understand too, are you saying, can you give it to them to practice, or can you do it and kind of send them that vibration?
Both. You do
Um,
it with them.
you
bring
can-
them into a meditation.
Yeah, you can absolutely
use
do that with them, and it'd be great meditation. And you can do, what you could do it is do it as a mantra practice. Do 108 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti's.
Oh.
Yeah, and it technically is Shanti. Shanti, the reason we don't say the he is because we have 3 in a row. So it's Shanti, Shanti, but the last one has the reflexive H, which makes it a he. So Om Shanti 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 he. But you could do 108 of those. That could be a very nice meditation. Yeah. Mantra is, we used to do some cool stuff. We should do that again. We used to do a 40-day mantra challenge. It was pretty cool. But mantra is pretty powerful because it is the vibration of the thing. So, okay. The last thing I just wanted to share about this one, we talked about diving in the deep end, is it is literally this idea of if you could just get the now, right? Not there, here, now, here, now. Like if you can just be here now, right? Think of what would happen with your suffering. Do you, I mean, unless you are like in pain, and in which case even then how we approach suffering in yoga is different, but pain and discomfort is approached through mindfulness and breath work. But even being completely present and here now, you can get your liberation going. But most of us need a little more than that. We're not just like, okay, here, I'm here, here I am. So he does go on then to the next sutra, and this is and I will define this for you. Is it on your screen at home? This is the correct way, right? Even though you can't read it anyway, because my handwriting is atrocious, but you have you can refer to your manual if you can't read what it says. So yogish, that just means yoga. And these are done as just one long word, but they're not necessarily really one long word. Yogish, and it's because it then goes into the word chitta, but that's a whole thing we don't need to know. Yoga. Chitta. Say that. Chitta. Chitta. This is translated as mind stuff quite often, or mind field. The idea being, again, in yoga, your mind, and in a lot of Eastern traditions, mind is different than it is in the West. Mind would be everything you think your personality is. So like, right? Who's Amy? Well, that's mind stuff. Who's, like, it's different than in the West, how we conceive of it. It's emotions. It's, do you like ice cream? That's your likes and dislikes, your yum yucks. That's a huge concept in yoga, is yum yuck. All of that's mind stuff. And we'll talk more about why that's important. But when we just say mind, it in the West tends to make people just think their brain is an organ and what it does. And it's more, it's your emotional nature. It's even, yeah, I mean, that's a part of it too. Your identity, it's to an extent, it's your body. I mean, your body and your mind are not, they're not separated, as we all know in yoga, the way they are in the West, where it's mind and body are the two things, and maybe spirit, but it's very integrated. What your mind is, your body is, in a lot of ways, because you need them both to go through the life that you need to have. The next one is vritti, V-R-T-T-I, vritti. Say that, vritti, vritti. This means literally whorl, W-H-O-R-L, like the whorl on your fingerprint, that shape. But it's not wrong to say whirl or swirl or wave. It's a motion, it's a movement. Okay, and I will piece this all, we'll piece this all together for you. I just want to give you the translation first. Okay, got it. That's a V. That's a V disguised as an R. Because it's hanging out with this R and it wants to be like it, and it's like, no, it's a V. It's a V-R-T-T-I. Okay. Yeah. Vritti. And then the last one is Nirodha. It's got the reflexive H at the end too. So that you, like Shanti, Nirodha is cessation or stopping. I'm gonna try to write cessation. That's what that says. So what does this all mean when we put it together? Yes. But it's basically yoga. It's our first definition of what yoga is. So it's like, okay, if you can't, I'm telling you, just be here now. Okay. If you can't quite do that, then let me tell you what yoga is. Yoga is when you cease the whirling movements, the swirling movements, the waves of the mind. That's what yoga is. Yoga is not a pose, though it can be, poses can be a tool. Yoga is when the mind waves are stopped. And remember, mind waves include personality, likes, dislikes, emotional things, predilections. It's when that stops. And why is it so important when that stops? Because what? Then you're liberated. Then you're liberated. Yes. Then you're liberated, at least for a moment, right? And that's what's happening when we have those moments on the mat where we're like, you know, even the students who are like, I was kind of joking about the students who are like, I want to look a certain way, so I do yoga or whatever. Like, there are much more efficient ways to look the way they probably want to look than going to a yoga class. There is something that gets people coming back, and it's these little moments here of the cessation of the mind stuff. And there's a common, well, I want to give you this phrase, and then I'll tell you a little analogy that is in that video if you've seen it. It involves a moon and a lake. And it's a very common one, and it's such a good one for you to be acquainted with. Does it sound familiar?
To make sure that meditation training can continue.
Oh yeah, it's such a good one to analogies are just such a great way to get to like deeper understandings too, than just being like yoga's mind stuff cessation, you know. So the next phrase we have, this phrase is actually not used in the sutras, but it is used in other Indian traditions, and it is very similar and okay to use. It's not, it still is a part of yoga tradition. The Patanjali uses slightly different words, but I like Sat Chit Ananda. Sat, S-A-T, and it's that short A sound, so it's It's spelled like sat, like I sat down, but it's It's Sat. Sat means truth. Chit, similar to this, right? Chitta, only in this context, it's consciousness, awareness. Either would be a fine translation. And then Ananda, I have the line over it because it's the long A sound, Ananda. Bliss. This isn't the bliss of like eating your favorite food. So what is Satchitananda? Satchitananda is your true and abiding nature. Yoga is, and most that I'm aware of, most Indian philosophy and traditions are subtractive practices, meaning your true nature, your true and abiding nature, that, by the way, Patanjali has a way, instead of kind of naming things, of giving their attributes, their qualities. So the qualities Satchitananda would have, Satchitananda is truth, consciousness, and bliss. You know it because it is eternal. It's the things in you that, it's the part of you that's eternal, that's unchanging, and that's pure. And by pure means it's undiluted with anything else. I think this analogy will help make sense when I get to it. But my point being, in yoga, this is your true and abiding essence. Chitta is what you think you are, and even more confusing is you think you're the movements of chitta.
So if 1 second chitta is pissed off because someone cut chitta off in traffic, the mind identifies with it and we think I am that. That's called the small s self. This is sometimes called the big S self. I'm saying S. So the example given is, of course, if you can imagine the Sat Chit Ananda is like a full luminous moon on a clear night. Okay, it's whole, it's complete. It is exactly everything it needs to be and nothing more, nothing less. Okay. And the pond beneath it is the chitta. And it's trying to see itself in the chitta. So that pond is the body, the mind, the emotions, all the stuff we talked about, the ego, consciousness type stuff, the things that identify as me. And when that Satchitananda through living life is trying to identify itself, it's seeing itself reflected in life, in a body, in a mind. The most clear reflection it can get, the most true reflection it can get is when the pond is doing what? Yeah, ceased movement. Whereas when we have little waves or ripples or tsunamis, right? The moon is going to get a very inaccurate representation of itself. It's going to be like, it's going to think it's shattered. It's going to think, oh, this over here is, ooh, and this and this and this. And it identifies with all this other stuff, the movements of the mind, and it gets confused about what it is. So yoga practices are designed to create that stillness. Because when that's created, then it's like, oh, that true and abiding nature, that Satchit Ananda is revealed. And we get to just kind of soak in that for a moment. And the more we do that, the idea in yoga of no step into the light can be undone is this idea that the more you spend time there, the more you notice it in your life showing up, right? You notice yourself maybe taking a pause before you react. Not always. I mean, maybe you will become a saint. And if that's your goal, the world could use more. That's great. But the two-part process in the sutras. There's a reflective process called Pratipaksha Bhavana. Don't even worry about what the words I just said, except there's not a translation that would really make sense, but it is a two-step process. And one of the things is to think the opposite thought. So when you have a thought, when you have a mental wave, part of what yoga allows us to do, because sometimes to live your life, you can't just go around with the chitta totally still all the time. You have to have thoughts like get food so your body doesn't die, right? Drink water. There has to be movements of the mind. However, we start to recognize them as that, not as me, but as a movement of my mind. And B, we can also then redirect them into a more helpful, and some people say negative or positive. I would just say there are helpful vrittis, helpful movements of the mind that will help ease suffering, and there are some that will not. And we all know we have patterns, habits that do not contribute to our well-being, and we have ones that do. And so through yoga practices, it allows us to get still enough, even if it's just for a second, to make a different choice and to redirect. So if the vritti's going this way, to be like, oh, no, go that way. And you don't always win. But the more times you see it, the more often you can redirect that vritti. And when you can't redirect it, the second phase of the practice is to just practice self-reflection and to be like, okay, here's what happened. And I'm aware of that. I have awareness. I've brought some light to that situation. And the vrittis that I identified with and let bring me down, right? So even in the second sutra,
I mean, it's just like, okay, just cease, just stop your mind, stop all your associations of the mind, no big deal. But it's pretty cool and it's pretty profound as yoga teachers to think about this, I think, because it is really quite a thing we're taking on. And that's not meant to scare you. It's just meant to be like, that's really cool. A piece of that is self-care. So, and I didn't write who said what, but like, you know, like how, so sensory overload, emotional energy. These are to some extent, there's some similarities here. You know, you have got to take care of yourself and you've got to be doing yoga to teach yoga. And it is a very common thing. I was telling my mentor group, it's very common to almost burn yourself out at first. Do you know anyone who's ever done that? Because the enthusiasm is so great. And that's wonderful. And actually though, but doing the more, there's this balance, because the more teaching you do, the growth is just exponential, right? Of course, you're going to grow as a teacher the more you teach faster. But you also need to be balancing that with your self-care. So it's very important to realize, right? Like it's going to be hard to teach from an empty vessel. You've got to fill yourself up and you've got to know what those things are that fill you up. So a question for you, how much yoga, if you're teaching, let's say you're teaching 2 classes a week, 2 1-hour classes a week, and you're generally there half an hour before, half an hour after, how much yoga do you think you should be doing a week? Guesses?
This is a guess.
Yeah.
I just heard to try to practice as much as we teach, but I don't know if that's an overload.
Similar idea,
I just
right?
heard, I've gotten advice from people who said that.
So try to practice as much as you teach. Has anyone kind of, it depends on you. You'll have to get to know yourself. Here's what I would say. That is a general good rule of thumb, but remember, especially if you start teaching like power yoga 6 times a week, 6 hours of yoga, it doesn't have to be the same thing. Like it might not be filling your vessel to do 6 hours of power yoga in a week. It might. There are some weeks where that might be just what you need. But remember, there's more than just asana, right? There's so many yoga practices. And so your balance will be different than anyone else's in this room, but just be aware you want to start thinking about that right away. And it is very common for yoga teachers to just kind of like, they're so used to teacher training and not getting to do yoga because they're so busy that then they start teaching and they don't do yoga because they're so busy. So just make sure that you are really, we also have a thing where we think we're going to A, be different people in the future than we currently are, and B, have more time than we currently have, and C, use our time better than we currently do. None of those things are true. They're not. They've done this with like exercise studies and like people, and I find this in yoga therapy all the time. Like you'll be like, how many hours a week can you practice? And people are like 10 hours. And you're like, I'll give you 10 minutes a day tops. Like you are not. No. Like we have this enthusiasm for future self. And I'm not saying to dampen that, but I'm saying to just be aware. Future self is very similar to current self. Future self gets tired. Future self needs to have a schedule where there's time for meals. So, be kind to your future self. The other thing I will say now too, as far as self-care, is to, well, let me ask you, what are some of your non-yoga hobbies or things you like to do? Running, hiking, mountaineering, walking, riding horses, dance. And I mean, in some ways we can make anything yoga with the right? But I want to encourage you to really keep those one of the things that can happen when you start teaching yoga is all of a sudden too, very quickly, the only people you know are people who do yoga or teach yoga, and all you talk about in every book you own, and everything is yoga. So that's another path to burnout. And it's not that, I'm not, again, while you have the enthusiasm, ride the wave too. I mean, truly, like, because you're going to have an ebb and flow. There's going to be times where you're like, I'm not reading another yoga book. I'm just not doing it. Or I'm not doing another training. I'm just not doing it. And then all of a sudden you're like, I just signed up for another training. What was I just ordered 3 yoga books off Amazon. So there is an ebb and flow to it that's normal. And when you have that enthusiasm, I'm not saying to dampen it, but I am saying leave room in your life for the people and things that bring you joy beyond just yoga. Be a balanced person.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If we don't really see ourselves teaching often,
Mhm.
but do want to keep learning, are there other people who continue to take trainings that don't teach?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I would say even just from my own experience of teaching 300 hour, we get a lot of people who just want to go on that personal journey and learn, especially once you have your 200 under your belt. Like 300 is a good opportunity if you're like, I really love the self-reflection and the philosophy, or if there's an aspect of it you really like and you don't want to do such a big training, sometimes you can find that. So absolutely. Yeah, there's all kinds. I mean,
How do you balance, can you talk about balancing, the reality is working, paying the mortgage, paying car payments and bills, and teaching yoga?
You just figure it out. I mean, it just depends. Everyone's going to have a different answer as far, because some of you might want it to be your career. Some of you might not. It's just a fun thing you want to do, or you don't even want to make money. You just want to share it, or you have a very specific group of people you want to share it with, like friends or something. And so I just think it's just like finding balance anywhere in life. Again, I would just say if there's a big financial drive for you, not only would I say go out and find your own opportunities and like do the hustle, but get your money up front. Even if you do donation sliding scale, I learned this with teachers pretty quickly, is at first they're like, yes, after school yoga, I don't even have to leave the school. And then they're like, those kids can't do what I asked today. I'm going home. I am not going to yoga. I'm going to make a grilled cheese sandwich and watch Netflix. So the thing to do is to be like, this is a 6-week offering. Here's the sliding scale. It's paid up front. And then if you have a day where no one shows up, you're not. That's them.
So you make a 6-week plan, and then you present them with how much money, and they would pay you in full for those.
They would be, yeah, they'd be signing up for a 6-week yoga program, or just 6 weeks of yoga. And and if you're like me, like I did donation based, but I was like, here's a suggested sliding scale.
Okay.
And payment will be due the first day. No refunds. Because you can't, I mean, you trust me, you will have people who, and sometimes it's the people who are your friends, who really think they should be, that A, it's okay to flake on you, and B, it's okay to not give you anything for your time and your efforts. But you've put money and time into your education. So it's like Laura said, like, and I still do believe there are places for Seva where you just go do, we pay people to go, we have opportunities all the time where we pay teachers and they go give yoga that we don't get paid for in the community. Like Erica taught the kids at Hillside Connection recently, and they're, they asked us to come and she did that. So there are places for it, but you have to be careful. Don't let your friends and family take advantage of you, because it's usually the people. No, sometimes it's just the people who also aren't from studios who value it the least, because they just don't get how valuable yoga is yet too.
So, all right. Yeah. Oh,
Early on, did you have people like sign contracts or anything like that, just in case like somebody was to be like weird about wanting a refund or something like that?
back in the day, no, I would now, maybe, or and it doesn't have to even be a big thing. It can just be your payment is acknowledgement that, and here's the little, you have, and sometimes you can do other things where you're like, okay, if you go home that night and you find out, you can leave some to your discretion. Like if someone goes home and finds out there's been a tragedy in the family, they can let you know, and you don't necessarily have to be like, no, I'm not giving you your money back and it's non-transferable. We get that in teacher training all the time. And it's like, no, okay, come back and do a different, we'll let you transfer it. Do a different training. So you don't have to be rigid. So you can word it in a way where there's, in fact, just word it in a way where there's some, like it's at your sole discretion. So, yeah.
I have a question. That question. Is there some sort of paperwork that I should be decide for when?
Yeah. Did this come up in business of yoga? Because it
told us to get liability insurance.
get insurance and if do waivers. Do waivers. You can grab ours. It's online. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna totally vouch for it. Don't sue me if something goes wrong with your waiver, but yeah. I would definitely get waivers. Yeah. Things were different back in my old days of teaching. You're just like, whoever, whatever, no contracts. Okay. Let me just see if there's anything else I want to say about this little section. Nope. I just want to reiterate for this idea and just really trying to hold that space where students can find those little moments of just connection with their true and abiding nature, right? That it's a lot more likely to happen when you're taking care of yourself. So do attend to that self-care. I know that's such a term that's almost overused now, but it's really important. And a few other little tips as far as self-care I want to give you. Maybe I do. What does this say? I can't read. There are some helpful practices. So you will have days where you don't want to teach. If you don't, then you are like in such a rare, like, I don't even know. It's such a rare percentage of people. You will have days or where something shocking and so disturbing and sad or upsetting happens right before. Like sometimes literally right before you walk in the room, everyone's already in there. And you just have got to do it anyway. And what I want to say about that is if you have already, we can train our brain, right? There's cue and response and reward. And so if we cue ourselves, we set up a cue that teaches our brain, now I'm going to teach yoga, I'm going to flip into yoga teaching mode. It will serve you on those days where you're tired or someone was rude in traffic or something. Do you know the story about how I got dumped? Yeah, I got dumped by someone I was in a long-term relationship with, like through a text that I got right before I went in to teach once. And it shook me to my, like, it was in a few minutes, like I still was checking in people and I just was like, I had just seen it and it was just like shock. It was so shocking. And it was the best thing he ever did for me. But at the time it was just like, wow, where is this coming? What, did I read this right? Like your brain is not, and yet I have a room full of people who I have to take care of. in a lot of ways. It was not my best class, I'm certain of that, but you know, if you have these little rituals, they can kind of almost serve to ground you in those moments. So your brain isn't, you can get yourself out of that fight or flight mode, that like brainstem kind of reaction. And so have a little ritual you do before you walk in the room. Like if you're in a space like this, like I always like you to give your example.
Yeah.
Will you say what you do? Do you know what she does? Has this come up? Okay.
And this makes me think, you said confidence, right? So, cause I like don't have much. So I go like walking the door is my like, people will offer to do it for me. And I'm like, thank you. But like, I have to go do that. And even like thinking about it, my heart just starts racing right now. And those stairs are really hard to walk back up and like not get anxious, more anxious, or your heart rate elevated more. So I'll do like 5-pointed star when I walk back up to be like, I'm big and confident and I'm gonna go like hold this space for people, but like walk up those stairs really slowly. And think about my Sankalpa. And then when I get into the room too, and we're at Samastitihi, I have, you know, them think about their intention and I come back to mine again too, and just repeat it. And that really, it's like click it on before, and then just another opportunity to really ground in.
Yeah. So what I love about that, like, are they called Easter eggs in video games?
Yeah.
Or something, right? It's like you've put Easter eggs in the class for yourself. So you're like, when I have them come to Hands at Heart Center, I'm going to have them do a little something. And that's my cue to myself to say my Sankalpa. And maybe you have a couple of those throughout class. And it just, so you're weaving in self-support into your class. I love that. Thank you. I've heard so many good little techniques over the years. So you'll find yours. It might be saying Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, or like I know a teacher who just goes to the bathroom and washes his hands, and that just kind of that ritual. It's ritualizing it. The ritual itself kind of means nothing. It's just a way to train your brain to get present and to take you out of whatever that other stuff is. Also with confidence, and we'll get into more sutra stuff in a little bit here, but another thing I want to say with confidence, so those pre-class rituals, teach things you're confident teaching. So often newer teachers feel like they have to, even though you like, and you're so sick of the sequence, you're like, I don't ever want to teach this. And so I'm sick of it. So everyone else is sick of it. So I have to reinvent the wheel. No, don't reinvent the wheel. Go out there, have confidence. And then you just bring in slowly little changes. Like, here's a little bit, I'm going to add this next week. And then that went well. So I'm going to keep that. And I'm going to add this other thing and take out this little thing to make room for it here. Okay. So it's just that is going to help with your confidence a ton. A lot of time, I was again telling my mentor group, sometimes the enthusiasm and the creativity far outreaches your actual skill level with sequencing yet. Sequencing is a thing that takes a long time to learn, very long time. You have the fundamentals, you'll be fine, but just give yourself that time. There's not a race. There is no race.
I just want to highlight what she just said.
She's highlighting, Erica's highlighting that. So underline it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And the thing is too, when you're teaching things you really know how to teach, you're going to start getting that confidence because you're going to get feedback and enthusiasm. And I was just talking to Leilani, who just started her internship maybe 6 weeks ago now. She was in our last group and she was like, we were talking and I was like, how's it going? And she's like, it's going so well. And I realized, because I tell people this when we talk about some of your fears and things, like literally no one in that room is hoping for you to fail. Everyone in there is your cheerleader because they want a good class, and little mistakes that if they're holding on to it, they are wishing themselves a really crappy class. No one is. Like if you're making little mistakes, people are very willing to let it go and grace because they want to keep having a great class. So she was like, I remember the talk, but like, it's true. Like people, it's just, I'm just having fun and they're having fun and it's not this big thing. So I said I'd tell you that. I don't know. You won't know till you know. All right, let me give you Sutra 1.33. This is in your journal. This is sometimes called the locks and the keys. I'm gonna erase this. And I'm not writing this whole thing out because it's way too wordy, but I will show you what the locks and the keys are. So by cultivating attitudes, I'm not writing any of that. And you might have a slightly different version in your manual. I can't remember what I went with, but a friendliness toward the happy. I'm gonna groan, that helps. Friendliness toward the happy. Where are my notes? Compassion for, I have to do this, I can't. I'm just not gonna be able to see your faces, so if you think we're making eye contact, we're not. Or we are and I don't know it. Like you're kind of all a little bit in the abstract right now, and I'm sorry. Compassion for the unhappy. Delight in the virtuous. And so let's see what I have here. I think I like what I have in your journals better. Let's see, I have disregard. I think in your manuals, I think I have equanimity. I'm going to use disregard because actually there is a certain, it's not a bad translation. I want to speak to that word in particular. Disregard or non-attachment. It's not the exact translation. Non-attachment wouldn't be, but that's kind of the idea. I'm toward the non-virtuous. So these on this side are the locks. What do they lock us out from? Satchit Ananda. From when we're locked up with these things triggering us somehow from people, then we forget our own real and true nature, and we get caught up in the drama of life and our own mind waves and our own likes and dislikes and things that annoy us, things that don't. And these are the keys to unlocking those locks so that we can find an undisturbed mind state. So the locks and the keys, and let's think particularly, the reason I bring up 1.33 when we meet is because I think it's just really good and powerful as you to take some time right now to think about the students who it's going to be hard to be happy for. Oh, wait, I have this backwards.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry. No wonder you were. Yeah. That's backwards. Why would we have a problem with someone who's happy or virtuous? Okay. Sometimes unhappy, we'll talk about those. But all of these things can be a type of student who can be displaying these kinds of things. And tonight I want you to think about what that might look like, why that might make you not so such a Ananda-ish, right? Like how it might make you instead relate with the vrittis. And it's just a good practice because it will happen. And ultimately so we have our big goal of liberation, right? We want to just provide liberation from suffering first. That's no big deal. But the other goal is we want students to come back to the mat. Whether it's our class, whether it's our studio, whether it's to the kind of yoga we teach or not, I believe in this room, all believe that yoga is good for people and is going to help them and support them, whether it's coming here or there or going to this person's class or that person's class. And so if someone's gotten you too stirred up, you're not going to provide that for any student in class. But especially that student who's gotten under your skin,
it's going to be, you're just not going to be able to hold the space for them. So you've got to kind of think this through. But why on earth would what do we think of with happy students why would that be hard? Why would we have to actually intentionally apply friendliness? If they're always happy. That's annoying happy people. Jerks. Yeah, I mean, it's true, right? Because what does that bring up in us?
Your own.
What?
your
We
own
get kind of
self-confidence.
generally, whatever we perceive as happiness in someone that we don't have, there's a jealousy there. So it might not even be that they're happy, but they do something or have an ability or look a way that we perceive will bring happiness. And we have to be aware, like maybe, I don't know what it is. Maybe there's a pose you've been working on since you were 5 years old. You saw someone do it. You're like, I've been working on this pose and you're nowhere near it. And you have a student come in and it's their first class ever and you teach that pose and they do it. Okay, let's just pretend that's it. Like that inner 5-year-old's like, you jerk, how could you just come in and do that, right? But it's a silly example, but it is a thing. Like you have to realize what this is calling for is deep self-examination. What do you perceive as the things in yoga that will create happiness that actually don't? And there's a lot of that out there, especially if you're following people on social media. My first thing would be clean up your social media. The second someone makes you feel an ounce worse about yourself, or like, I should be doing that, I should be striving for that. If they bring up striving in you, unfollow them. It's just toxic. Sorry, that had only a little to do with this, except the fact that the more we are allowing that stuff in yoga, everything you allow in through your senses essentially is becoming part of your chitta, your mind stuff, right? So it's not just, we're digesting everything we allow in through our senses. It's not just stuff you eat that you digest. It's what you hear. I've been listening to way too much on Ukraine and I know I need to cut it out. And because it's like, there's a point where it's like, you're informed and there's a point where you're making yourself sick, right? And it's the same, social media. You can say people inspire you, but inspire you to do what? To strive to make a shape with your body? Okay. I mean, if that gets you on the mat, but what happens when you get older or you get sick? Because your practice will change. Trust me, as someone who, I got an autoimmune disorder when I was the year after we opened Cambio. And like my practice changed night and day. I mean, it just changed completely so quickly. And it happens. So you've got to really examine where are you, what are you really attached to? And some of it is, it's just, it's going to be there. There's going to be some attachment. We're human, but where can you let it go so that if a student comes in and they display the thing that you are craving, can you still treat them with friendliness and kindness and really accessing that genuine space in your heart for it? And that doesn't happen unless you've worked on it before it happens in a lot of ways. Yeah, Nathan.
How's unfollowing someone?
Friendliness toward yourself.
So
You
you're
still
saying
get to have
friendliness
good
towards
boundaries. No, I mean,
Friendliness towards the
here's
people
what
that
I'm
don't
saying. So let me differentiate the two different things. Following or unfollowing someone on social media has nothing to do with them. You don't have to be friendly to an image that isn't real.
Yeah.
It's not like I can see a picture of you and be like, I mean, I could click like, but otherwise I can't be like, hey, man, I'm being friendly to you. Like if you are showing me images that make me, that chip away at how I feel about myself, then absolutely the best thing I can do is unfollow you.
But you're not saying that that person is wrong. Like, I mean,
I think it.
I think it's a very mixed thing. Here's what I would say. I would say there are people who really have a messed up sense of what yoga is about. And that what they're promoting is not yoga.
Specifically yoga.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have social media.
Yeah.
It sounds
So
very-
you have no, okay. I'm talking about people, there's a huge just thing in social media of women with a certain body type of a certain age. I'm seeing more and more skin colors. It used to just be mostly white. It used to mostly be 25 years old or younger, with very exceptionally bendy, strong practices that aren't necessarily safe too. And that's, if you're looking at that and you're what you're doing is you're feeding that to yourself. And on some level, your chitta's digesting it and saying, this is what you should be. This is what it should be. Your brain wants to know what the should is. That's a huge quest in life. That's a huge vritti drive, is who should I be? What should I be doing? And so if we're constantly absorbing these images, it is again, tsunami. It's just this ongoing, it's an everlasting tsunami that you're going to drown under, because you cannot stand up against that. You are digesting it. Even if you say to yourself, oh, well, I'm appreciating it. Well, okay. And that's cool if that's your path. But I'm saying most people I know, when they get real honest about themselves, those images are hurtful. And those messages that they're digesting with it. So what I mean by this is, if you're going to be friendly to the student who comes in and has that perceived, whatever the thing is, if you're like, oh, they look this way in their yoga pants, or, oh, they can do this pose, or, oh, whatever it is, or they are genuinely happy and I'm just jealous because I'm not, whatever. But if I'm talking about the more perceived happiness things, okay, if you are continually feeding your brain, your chitta, the should of that, your brain is going to actually buy it. And when they see that person, it's going to even be more jealous, and it's going to be harder to access that true friendliness and that true, just, that's cool. You can do that. Wow. Yeah. It's so, if you really, the more you are upsetting your chitta with the vrittis of how people should look when they're doing yoga, how you should look when you're doing yoga, and this and that is what yoga is about. And that's what happiness is. Then when you see that person doing it, it's going to be far more, you're going to honestly just be more jealous and envious and feel like worse about yourself, and it's harder to hold space when you're feeling that way. Whereas if you don't let those images in, when you see it, it's a lot easier to stop the vrittis and be like, ooh, I just got a little jealous. I just saw myself do that, instead of this, like, it's the difference between a sip of water and a fire hydrant in your face, right? So you can take a sip of water and be like, oh, whoa, I just bought into that. And I'm going to redirect that vritti. Like we were talking about redirecting vrittis. Does that make sense?
So you'd also say that you shouldn't do it yourself, like post those kinds of.
I will say I wouldn't do it myself, because and you will notice what we post and don't post as a studio. I don't post people in really wild poses. I don't show pictures of myself doing really. I have a belief, and studies show, by the way, there's lots of studies on before and after pictures, because people say, oh, it's motivational and it's inspirational. There's studies as to how damaging that is deeply damaging. It is not, it inspires you for 6 weeks until you change, until you can't do it anymore, and then you feel like crap. And it creates horrible cycles for people's psyche. So here's what I would say, Nathan. Everyone has to come to that conclusion on their own. For me and me as a studio owner, it's not appropriate, I don't believe. But there are people who I'm sure feel like for them it is. And I would just be like, okay, I just won't follow you then.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a level of hypocrisy post all this stuff in there. But then you look at their Instagram and go, I'm sure you're that, like everyone, I feel like everyone is that to someone else to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah. I got you. Yeah, I don't think you're quite seeing what I'm talking about. I think everyone else in here who's on social media is seeing what I'm talking about half naked women with their legs behind their head balancing on one arm. Who are skinny and strong and have big boobs and have big butts and have the right hair and the right, like it's marketing. It's about selling an image to people about who belongs in yoga and who doesn't. And they are the gatekeepers. And it frankly, see, that's why you can't, if you get into it too much though, it's okay to have opinions and it's okay to have boundaries. And in fact, we are not supposed to participate in violence toward others. And so that's why we want to talk out about things that are wrong. But then disregard, non-attach. Here's where we get into non-virtuous is what you're getting into. Yes, we are all hypocrites. I'm sure. I know I've posted things where I look back and I'm like, why did I post that? But I will also say this. I feel like it's something by and large I've always been aware of with yoga that I've tried to be very careful of because I've noticed what those images do to me, to my friends, I know what it was like to grow up in the 90s where the supermodels were 5'11" and somehow insanely thin and yet had giant boobs and just these things that were like so damaging to our psyches because we're looking at the magazine. And so our brains, our chitta is taking it in. And so it is one of those things where it's like, you have got to just draw your line and decide what's right for you and what's wrong for you. And then be open to, oh, maybe that changes. But being like, this damages me when I let it in. This damages others if I do it. So I'm not going to participate. Haley, we've gone down a whole different road.
I'm really glad you went down this road though, because I have felt like I compare myself to people on social media, not even particularly just in yoga, but just to like body image and oh my God, like they have a kick-ass job, like they have their life together. But I think what Amber's particularly trying to say is that it's really, and I'm not saying that men don't experience it, but I feel like they're in the beauty and fashion industry, it's particularly like catered to women and how women should look and how women should dress. And like, especially with yoga, it's a female dominated industry. And yeah, when you don't look like that person who is, I don't know, in wheel bouncing on one arm and has a six-pack, you think, well, am I even a good yoga teacher? Like she's getting all the hype and all the credit on her, whatever, like who really am I?
And I think that's so important. Like you also might be like, this stuff doesn't bother me. I will say this, if you're inundated with it at some point, your brain, your chitta starts to believe it. It becomes your vritti. And you're creating patterns, you're creating grooves in your mind that are after a while you get so entrenched in them, you don't even know you're in them. You're like, it's like walking a path in snow and going deeper and deeper until all you see is snow. You don't even know there's anything else out there. And I think as yoga teachers, it's just so important because I do think too, there's a message out there about that you just have to be very careful about who has the right to teach yoga. It does not have anything to do with the shape you can make or not make with your own body in a certain pose. There are people who are naturally backbendy people. Some on this couch over here. Right? And then there are some who are like, not so much, or there's some, but things change too. Like there are poses, and there's poses I could do now that I couldn't do 20 years ago. Like my practice as someone, I can just tell you your practice, if you're listening to your body, your practice absolutely must change. And if you're going to honor that, that means you have to be able to let go. There are going to be arm balances, and it changes day to day. Have you ever done a pose one day and the next day you're like, whose body is this? What? I just did this yesterday. Like what happened? And so if you are going to have a practice for your whole life, you've got to recognize it changes. And part of that is if you are buying into the imagery of what a yoga teacher's practice should look like, because a lot of these people too, then they sell their programs on, come do my 200-hour training online for $199. Don't get me. But it makes me mad because it takes advantage of people in a way that is just so.
Yeah, I mean, it's like diet culture too. It's like when a super ripped influencer is like, buy my diet program and you can look just like me. It's like we could eat the exact same thing and we would look completely different.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with yoga.
Total thing. Yeah. And sometimes, and this is the thing too, like it's easy when, if you're on that stuff too much, taking it in too much, you start to think, oh, you forget that tells me nothing about the yoga this person's doing. Yeah. And even their asana, are they breathing in it? Because I've seen these videos, you know how now the thing is like a picture and a video next to it. And I've seen the videos and I'm like, you're definitely not breathing. There's no, or, you know, it's just one of those things where it's like, you can't, and maybe they are, and that's cool too. But it doesn't mean you're not doing yoga. And it doesn't mean, you know, if your forward fold is like this, but you're breathing and your mind is one pointed, oh my gosh, you have so much to teach people and to share with people. That's what I'm talking about. Share that. Don't, whatever. Okay. So if you have a constant just onslaught of negative imagery, it's going to be really hard to get into those sweeter spots in your heart for people, because you feel bad about yourself. And it's ultimately getting into a sweeter spot in your own heart for your own self is what has to happen. Right. And so that is a big part of self-care. Here's where we talk about boundaries too. Here, let me just stop real quick. Do you want a little break? Or should we get through these? It's 8:00. What time is what? Oh, that's a good question. You usually break at Shavasana. It's in. Yeah, class goes till 8:15.
This is a good conversation.
Yeah. So you break during Shavasana and you just tiptoe? A quiet break? Okay. Good, thank you, Maggie. That helps me. Okay, so we'll keep going and we'll see. In about 7 minutes, we'll probably take a little break. Oh, when they're done? Okay, that makes sense. Okay, we'll just talk so we'll break at 8:15 then. All right, so compassion for the unhappy. Why is this hard? That's a big breath. Did you have thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts. Well, there are times when it's not just like unhappy. The times I have a hard time with it is when it's people in my life that are constantly like finding the worst and they're upset about all these minor things all the time, and like there's nothing hopeful, like, and it's not depression necessarily, it's just not being able to not being able to be grateful that the small frustrating moments overtake everything else in their life. Of like, yeah, it can be super draining. I mean, thinking of a particular person in a particular conversation recently. I'm sorry. But and it's just that constant, I think, is when I have the hardest time of like, oh yeah, I forgot who I'm talking to. Yes. No. Yeah, I know. It's really hard. Okay. I'm trying to like sympathize, but at the same time, like, did you also notice like 75% of your day that went really well? Actually, 90% of your day. And these bad things that happened were because good things came in and told you this is happening and gave you like an out. Anyway. Yeah. So
that was that energy vampires.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Are you at home? I'm just gonna trust you. If you're not hearing something, let me know if you're missing part, anything, and I'll get you caught up or have someone repeat, okay? Yeah, energy vampires, and it becomes a real thing. If you're someone who draws them anyway, wait till you start teaching yoga. Because there are some very nice, wonderful people, but they think it's your job to provide therapy or to listen to these things. And so I want to tell you that having compassion doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. Compassion means you compassion, first off, you gotta have some for yourself. And that means you have boundaries. And there might be days where you're like, yeah, I can stay a little longer and talk, and I feel okay with that. And there might be days where you're like, nope, I can't. And so a couple phrases to have in your back pocket, particularly if you're someone who you kind of draw the energy vampire type, where you're giving every clue, like you're like my partner just called, I'm leaving, I'm on the, if you know that you're that person. So one thing is to say that's outside the scope of my practice. Have you talked to someone a professional? And that might be, sometimes it's an injury. And they're talking about an injury. Sometimes it's like they're treating you like you're a professional counselor. And that's where you can also, this was my Grandma Richmond's phrase, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable commenting on that because it's just outside the scope of my practice. I'm not comfortable is a good phrase to have. It's tough, right? But you kind of have to like have it, because what will happen if you don't have it right there to access, like memorize these, because if it's not there to access, then you're gonna get your ear talked off for 90 minutes and go home and be exhausted. It's always on the day where you like have to do all the stuff at home and you're tired anyway and you're whatever. So it's okay. And all of these things are compassionate things to say. I mean, it is very, not just compassionate, but appropriate to refer them to the proper person. Yeah.
This reminds me of, well, I guess like it's overlaps into personal life too, right? Like people expecting you to fix their problems or be their person for everything. And so my friends and I, we got into a really good habit before we just started dumping things onto each other, like to ask, like if they have space right now, or like if we don't remember to ask, and like my friend calls me and she's like just wanting to like vent and like vent words. I'll say something like, I don't have the space right now to be here for you. And that's like not what I want to do. Like when I want to be there for you, like I want to be there for you in all the ways. And like, I have life stuff going on right now, so I can't be there for you right now. And I'm doing this out of love.
That's so good. And yeah, like that is a good thing to say, like, if someone comes up to you with feedback or thing, like there's just certain ways where you can be like, you can just say to people, I want to give you a thoughtful response. And I just don't have the capacity for that right now. That's similar. Like I have to use that sometimes in business. So Sarah June wrote, with my job, I have in my back pocket, sorry, I am already booked. Yes, because sometimes I am booked taking care of myself. And I'm not obligated to say yes. And along with that, I would say it's okay to, just be like, I need to, like here, studio policies, we close half an hour after class. So it's okay to be like, hey, why don't I walk out with you? We're closing right now, but I'll walk out and say goodbye to you outside. Just like clear, like the conversation is not continuing in the parking lot, but we are leaving and then we're going to say goodbye. We'll say goodbye outside.
Or another one, and if you say it wrong, it sounds condescending, but you can say, any of these would. But another good one is, oh, that'd be such a great thing to journal about. Oh, but when you say it right, though, people are like, oh, I mean, it really can be.
Yeah, like totally. You could say it in a way. I can see how you could say it in a way that like is encouraging rather than.
Yeah, kind of like, oh, what you're onto. That's a great, you're onto a great thing. Go write about it.
Or listen to yourself talk, like record yourself and then listen again later, like through audio.
Yeah. Did you have more on that, Nathan? Okay. Yeah, so there's things, and so I do want to just say when I'm on this one is that we want to have compassion for people. Sometimes when we're finding ourselves unable to have compassion, it's because we haven't put up appropriate boundaries, or we're attached to changing what they're doing somehow. And that means there needs to be a boundary. So to like, instead of being like, oh, why don't you just notice the 75% of what's great? Instead it's like, I just need to walk away from this. I need to extract myself from this conversation. So, but it's hard. It's so hard to be human. I could just see what it is. Okay, so I'll talk quietly. Because right, we take break at 8:15 and I just talk quietly now. Okay, thank you. I think delight for the virtuous. Can you hear me at home? Delight for the virtuous is similar, right? When we and this is true virtue or maybe perceived virtue, but generally he meant like really virtuous. Like if someone is doing the things that you perceive as virtuous, whatever that is, they're honest or they live their lives in a way that you perceive as virtuous and you're not quite there yet. I have this with morning people. Oh, I want to be one. I sure perceive that as a virtue. Not really. I don't actually really think it is a virtue, but I've had times in my life where I have really been like, why am I not this way? But when you see someone doing things that are hard for you to do, that are good for the person and good for society at large. Yeah, I don't know if that's good for society at large. It's good for the people who need you to be up at, but like, I'm not going to help anyone by being up at 5. I'm going to make the world worse. Guaranteed. But I guess my point is if it's like, you know, there's something. No, I'm not going to use that example. Well, not right now. I want to use more of a kind of yoga student example you might see. So what in the world of yoga are there, you know, and I don't need to hear everyone's, but just kind of think about what is the thing. Maybe you're like those people who drink kale smoothies all day are really virtuous. And when I see them come in with kale smoothies, I'm going to feel bad about myself. So I'm going to have to work on delight. Okay. That's just the thing. It's just know what your thing might be. Maybe you think it's a virtue, and also notice what you think is a virtue that's not really a virtue. There's nothing morally better about a person that gets up at 5 a.m. There's nothing. There's a lot of real immoral people. I wonder what time Putin gets up. I'm sorry, Hitler. Okay, I'll use Hitler. Maybe that's less. What time did he get up? Go ahead, Nathan.
I don't know why it sounds like really good yoga examples, people that are vegan for moral reasons.
I was gonna go down that road. Yeah, he brought up veganism. I as someone who's been on both sides, I wasn't always vegan. I am vegan now. There's a lot of hate toward vegans because people assume that you're just like, and I hate you. And it's like, and I used to kind of be that person who was like, vegans are so annoying. And I never knew an annoying vegan. I just felt kind of bad about it myself. So that's where you've just got to get real on. Thanks. You brought up what I was going to.
Well, because sometimes it's like you feel like, well, I don't like
the mistreatment of the animals, like
Mhm.
eating other beings or whatever, but like,
They're so
so you,
sad.
but you see other people do it, and
Mhm.
instead of delighting in their virtuosity.
Yeah, instead of being like, yay, they save some animals, even if I can't.
Yeah.
You get like, oh, they're annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people don't even know I'm vegan because the vegans get so much shit. And I just don't have the energy for it.
They get so much shit because of people not delighting in, like
Yeah.
they know it, like, it's not like they think it's unvirtuous or something. They know it is, and that's what makes them so mad. at
It's
vegans.
true. That's what used to make me mad about vegans. I know. I used to be so annoyed by vegans. And it was nothing they were doing wrong. It was everything that I just felt bad about my choices. And this isn't me saying go vegan or you're bad if you feel, I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying like, whatever, for you, it might not be vegans. It might be whatever. The thing is, 5 a.m. people, whatever the thing is, where you're just like, only, again, Hitler could have been getting up at 5 a.m. and it meant nothing about what he was doing morally or immorally in the world, right? Or amorally even. So just, this is just like know thyself. And when that person comes in, can you just kind of, they're wearing their vegan shirt or something. And you instantly get this like annoying vegan or whatever it is. Can you then take a step back and be like, okay, that's more about like, that's me. I can be totally nice to this person and be happy that whatever. Last one, and we hit on this a little. Disregard for the non-virtuous. It doesn't mean ignore them. It doesn't mean don't stand up for what's wrong in the world. In fact, like I said, particularly with violence, we are contributing to it if we're not saying something about it. But, or injustice, things like that. There's a lot of reasons to be politically active, to be socially active, to get involved in causes. But then you have to let it go at night and not make yourself sick. And that's where, watch what you're letting into the chitta, because like with me, too much news lately about Ukraine. I mean, again, there's a point where it's like, I'm not doing anything to help them by knowing every horrible thing that every atrocity. So I bring this up because you might have a student come in with very different political beliefs. And it's still your job to hold the space for them. Now, if they come in wearing something racist, offensive, like anti-Semitic or whatever the thing, then you get to be like, no, I'm protecting my students and you're leaving. But if they come in wearing a shirt that you don't like, or you saw them in the parking lot and there's a sticker on the car for a politician you don't like, you're still teaching them yoga. And you've still got to find a way to just not let it affect you and all, and therefore your class for all your other students. So, okay. It's 8:18. Do you need 5? Do you need 10?
5 is probably fine.
5 is good. I'll try to get you out at 7 minutes early now. I'm not promising 7. I said try. I promised 2. Okay, and you're going to point your finger and lean over and draw figure eights, but move your ear, move your head with your body, your, whatever, see, I need this too, your arm. Okay, go one way about 3 times. You do, you look totally ridiculous. Now go the other way. Go the other way. Okay, now let that go. Bring your arms overhead. All right. Try to send, and it doesn't matter which, sometimes it's easier if you watch me and mirror me, but try to send one arm forward and one back. And you're gonna make a complete circle. So it's like patting your head and rubbing your belly. Oh, no, you're doing both back. So start at the top and bring one. Just think about about halfway, they meet up at your legs and then they come around. Yeah. Yeah, you're getting it. And then if that, like Aubrey, you've got it there. Now try to go the other way. Oh, that used to be, I haven't done that in a while. It used to be. Okay, now, oh, are you okay? That's your dangerous spot. Now just bring, all you're gonna do is to the count of 4. I'm gonna count to 4. So rhythm helps wake up our brains, and we cross the midline of our body. So it's just 1, 2, don't go too fast, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So part of why they found you, they've done all the study of yoga, and the different shapes we make with our body actually affect our brain and where the energy is at with our brain. And so there's something called brain gym that they use with kids. Did you ever use brain gym? Yeah. And it really helps with learning. So here's a couple of those things. All right, there you go. So question, you just do what, because you went both ways. And it has to do, I don't know what, I could have told you once upon a time why you do it that way, and I don't know anymore. Or it's not going to hurt you, like your head's not going to fall off if you do the left side. Yeah, so you'll be okay. Yeah. It does feel though funny, like we're so used to yoga where we get both, but it's like, yeah, what's happening? I'm just giving you an example of how you can be imperfect. Oh, are you doing the eye thing? Do you know the eye thing? No. Oh, he's still. Oh, I think it's to help the left.
That's your left hemisphere, which is your
logic. Yeah. Yeah, but you're also part of it though too, is you're crossing the midline. So it actually helps to get energy across the corpus callosum, which connects the right and left hemisphere. So when you do any kind of movement, so think of your twists, things like that, you're helping to actually get the left and right brain to work better together. But I don't know, that's a good question. All right. So we have about 20-ish minutes. Here's what we're doing. So that was Sutra 1.33. I just wanted to kind of give you something that you can hopefully just kind of ponder and be like, okay, here's how you can really take, how you can, so, oh, it's not even her. Okay. How you can, you know, these sutras are things you can use as a yoga teacher. You just kind of have to, because you're a human and they're for humans. So, but they can be very specifically applied to yoga teachers and I think support you in your teaching. Let's get into the more practical stuff, some of your fears and concerns and things like that. So I talked about self-care. I want to talk about a couple of other categories. I don't know what is up with my notes. Managing your class, fears of teachers, and feedback. And then within a lot of that, it'll weave in a lot of your questions, or hopefully it will. And if not, I plan to go back and grab them. So we talked about, what do I want to do first? I'm going to do fears of teachers. Here's a thing. Oh, I think this is so good. And we so often don't do this, but when you are confronted with a fear, and anywhere in life, right? Oh, you're like all the time. What do I do? But you ask yourself, and this is so important for yoga teaching, is it almost always will fall into one of these two categories or sometimes both. Is it because I'm lacking a skill? Or because of negative self, don't get me started. Yawning. Is it because of negative self-talk? It's very rare that a fear isn't connected to either negative self-talk or just you need to work on a skill more or learn a skill, right? So when you can identify that, so like you're like, oh, I've been having absolute panic about teaching every week. Well, I know, and I still do this, and this is why I don't teach anymore, because I only have time to teach one class a week. However, when I only teach one class a week, I start to panic about it 3 days before, and I'm sick for 3 days. And it's because my skills aren't sharp. If I am teaching 2 a week, the difference it makes is huge. I don't have panic. I don't have stress about it. So that's one example. Sometimes your skills just aren't sharp, but sometimes too, it's just a skill you need to learn. Like maybe and that's why I, again, say, go slow with what you're adding in. Give yourself time to be like, okay, now I really have figured out, I added, maybe you add Ardha Chandrasana, half moon somewhere. Like take time to really learn how to teach it, to practice teaching it so that, and that's why it's like you can get really good at that and have so much more confidence in it than if you are teaching 27 poses you've never taught before in a class, right? So take time to get to know the skill. Talk to the people who do the skill well. What are they doing? Observe them, talk to them. Have a like high council of people you go to, whether it's someone who knows about business, someone who knows about yoga, someone who's just really good with their interpersonal skills. Have those people you can go to. Oh, I'm so sorry I missed that, Sarah. The jogging thing. If I miss a comment, just
okay.
Yeah, I know it's been too long and I totally missed it. I'm sorry. But if I miss any comments, just unmute yourself and be like, hey, lady, don't neglect me. Do it. It'd be great. So analyze those things. You can learn skills. Now, if it's negative self-talk, then you go back to the vrittis and you work on, again, that practice Pratipaksha Bhavana. It is the skill of redirecting your vrittis. And yoga gives us very specific tools. Mantra, sankalpa, pranayama will change the way you're thinking. Meditation will. Go do some asana. Like get out of your own head, but also just recognize, sometimes just recognizing, whoa, this is negative self-talk. There it is. Or in giving that, that's another thing they're doing in psychology now, where you like, you're like, you recognize that the negative self-talk is like a part of yourself that's just trying to support yourself, and you give it a name like I feel like Midge or Prudence or something, you know, just this really stern, like kind of person who's just, but who they're like just trying to like, I'm doing this because I love you. Don't screw it up like you did that one time or whatever it is. Like you just, sometimes if you can make it ridiculous in your mind, all of this to say, find the techniques that work for you. I think I told my mentor group this. Did I tell you about the speaking to yourself in second person or third person?
Yeah.
Was that mentor group?
Yeah.
They're doing research now. There's a good book called Chatter that goes into this a bit. There's all kinds of ways to take yourself out of anxiety, but they are finding if you, and you, this might work well for your Sankalpa to, if you speak to yourself in second person or third person rather than first, your brain can believe it. So if I say, I am confident, my brain's like, no, I am not. But if you say Amber's confident, well, your brain identifies a name as someone else. So it's kind of like, if I can believe Nathan's confident, I can believe this Amber person is. Or you are confident, Amber, is like, oh, this is how I'm perceived from the outside. So is it true? So play around with those things. Find things that work for you. Get the negative self-talk under control. And then it'll come up somewhere else. Yeah, it is whack-a-mole. It's totally whack-a-mole, isn't it? But also remind yourself, like I said before, no one in the room is rooting for you to fail. And this is a skill I want to give you. Please remember this. Please write this down, or at least write it on your brain mentally. Do not apologize for anything that doesn't need an apology. Your students want you to steer the ship. If you going to a yoga class and they're like, so is the heat, do you want to do the heat up or down? Okay, do you want to, like, where it's just like, I came here for you. Literally, they are paying for you to tell them what to do. So do it. And if you make little mistakes, like saying left when you mean right, or forgetting a pose. So this is where we're getting into some of those skills, right? Like, or your brain goes blank or something like that. If you keep apologizing, you get yourself in like it's like snowballs, and pretty soon you just can't stop. You can't move on. You could say, sorry, left, and move on. But this whole, oh, I'm so sorry, left, just be like, oh, I meant left. Like, you don't need to, you haven't hurt anyone by saying right instead of left. Just don't apologize for it. You would apologize if you step on someone's hand. You would not apologize if you forgot a pose. Just be like, oh, thank you for pointing that out and doing the pose or whatever. It's just really quickly becomes a very, you don't feel like the captain of the ship anymore. And then the students, it's deeply uncomfortable for students. You're robbing them of the experience of being able to just let that go. They don't want to be the one to, they need to be making choices about their body and their breath, not trying to make you feel better because you made a mistake. And it gets into that with some of that, like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I've done it. I did a class early in my teaching where I apologized so much and I couldn't stop. Like, I literally got to a point where I wanted to crawl into a hole, and I still had like probably 40 minutes to go. I don't know. I was just like, oh my gosh. So it does happen, but just catch yourself. Steer the ship, speak with authority, have confidence. And those rituals will support you. So put those little Easter eggs in your class so that if you are kind of going off the rails, you can come back to it. Now, if you totally forget where things are going, no one's going to know. So you bring them to down dog and you think, or you bring them to child's pose. And you can usually, like, if you can give yourself a breath or two, even just a breath or two of just kind of like, okay, they're taken care of, and just kind of relax, it'll come back. In a worst case scenario, it doesn't, and you improvise for the next 40 minutes and you're not going to hurt them. I've never heard of that actually happening where someone totally forgets everything, but you might have moments where you forget. Expect that you will, and that's just going to be okay, and that you're going to put them in down dog, or you're going to be like, oh, I forgot. Did we do this on the left? Sometimes just acknowledge it, like, just be human. Yeah. So, I'm getting into all kinds of things here. Yeah. So watch the apologies. There are appropriate ones, but others that aren't.
Did Kristen tell you about when she de-pants? Fell? Okay, you did get that story. Okay, good. That's when, if you were the teacher, she wasn't the teacher, I don't believe, but if you were, then you would definitely apologize. A lot of times you're afraid to teach your first class because of lack of knowledge. And just remember this, that you know enough to teach a safe, well-balanced yoga class. And even if you have someone show up in your class the very first day who's been teaching yoga for 27 years, they didn't come to judge you. They came to do yoga. So just lead them through the practice. The less you get in your own head about it, the better it's going to be. They don't need you to be doing anything spectacular other than just being yourself and teaching the sequence. So really, you've got to notice that when you're starting to go down into those thoughts of like all of that stuff. Anyhow, managing your class, teach the class as described. And that means the time it starts and ends to the best of your ability. Every now and then you're going to be like, I just have 5 people who've never been here show up 2 minutes before class starts. That happens. And then you go in a little late or you whatever, but teach the class as described. Sometimes it's appropriate to do something, but it's like if something major is happening that affects everyone, it's not because you're just not in the mood to be in a hot room and you are teaching a hot class, right? It'd be more like when most of our vinyasa classes were heated, and we had, who was here when we had the fires in Colorado Springs? Any of you? And you could just see them on the mountain and the smoke was in the air, and it was like no one wanted heat. Like people were coming in and just being like, can you not turn on the heat? Because like everything felt fiery. And it was like, we kind of let teachers choose at that point. Except the hot students, and they're their own, they love the heat no matter, they're like, bring it on. But it was just, so there are rare examples, but by and large, teach the class, address the elephant in the room. Oh yeah, Nate.
Bro,
Nathan, pardon me.
This is something that, like, what happens when there's a contradiction where like some people are like, it's too hot.
I don't ask them. If there's a contradiction, and that's why it's so important to just teach the class that's listed unless there's some wild thing in the world.
That happens to me as a student though, a lot of times, like in the morning classes, I'm like, it says it's supposed to be between 80 and 90. And like teachers will like,
they shouldn't be.
Is it hot in here? And
Yeah,
everyone's
no.
like, oh my gosh, and then they'll turn it off and it'll be like 60 degrees by then.
Yeah, so don't do that. You've learned what not to do.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll a lot of times it's those things that drive you nuts that you're like, that's what I shouldn't be doing. And it is amazing because I literally in the last training, there were like, there's a whole thing about the not saying sorry. And then I got feedback about a student just saying sorry. So, I mean, you will like, it's also easy to think you're going to do things and then get in the real world. And you're like, I totally did this thing I was never going to do. So you catch yourself and be like, oh, I just asked students if the heat was okay. You can do that, but 80 to 90 is a big difference. If it's 87 and they're real hot overall, bring it and let it go down to 80. But then if it gets below that, bring it back up. Do what's advertised. That's what they signed up for. There's exceptions. If you have a class where everyone shows up and they're brand new and they're like, didn't know what they signed up for, and you have 5 friends who decide to come to a heated power class and there's no one else in the class, then you can do something different. Are you doing good? I'm seeing hand motions at home. Okay, we're good. All right.
I got a hair in my eye. Sorry.
Oh no, I think it was
hair probably.
I was like, is she getting what's happening? Okay. So let me get to addressing the elephant. And this is about really, again, commanding the ship. And this can have to do, so rude students,
again, it doesn't happen often. When it does, you just kind of have to know, again, like I said, is it something where you can live with what happened and trust that when they get out of there, they're going to be a better person and that they're just having a crappy day and a crappy moment and we've all been rude and been embarrassed by what we've said or done at some point? Or is it a thing where it's like, this needs to be addressed and no, you're not coming to class? I have had a person who talked the whole class. We talked about that, who literally, it was like nothing I've ever seen. And I had to actually, like, none of my tricks were working. So you want to address the elephant in a way that signals to other students, I'm going to handle this the best I can. You don't have to worry about it. For instance, when we used to use CDs in the old days and one would skip and you're adjusting a person on the other side of the room and you can't get out of the adjustment, you would just say, I hear that, I'll get to it in a minute. And even though they have to deal with the skipping for a minute, it's totally different than the experience of, does she hear that? Is this going to go on for the next 40 minutes? Totally different experience. And it's this, so like I had a student who just, it was like nothing I've ever seen, the talk. It was every pose, everything. And at first I kind of laughed and then it kept going on. And then I tried the trick about let's seal our lips and do Ujjayi breath. And then I'd be like, remember, yoga is a silent practice. And I tried all the signals and they weren't working. And I finally, but what those things were doing, they also like, they let other students know, like, I'm trying, I'm aware of it. Keep doing your thing, you know. And I finally did have to go over and whisper and say, like, I need you to stop talking. Like, please stop talking. And that turned into a whole thing. It worked, but then she came back and did it again. And I had to have a talk about like how she would not be invited or allowed back if she kept doing that, because it was so disruptive. It was unreal. So you will, but I don't want to scare you with that story either, because it's so rare to have. This literally happened 12 years ago. It was the first year we were open, so more than 12 years. And so things like that are rare. And most of the time people are just like, oh, and they usually, if anything with talking, you have friends who come together and just get a little too chit chatty and they don't even know that they're being disruptive to other people, and they'll take the cue pretty quickly. But yeah, address the elephant. I can't believe no one asked about what do you do if a student farts?
I'm so glad you brought this up.
What? Nathan's got the answer. What do we do? Or were you saying I do a?
No, in no music class. I farted in Camel and it was completely quiet.
Can you hear that?
Just like life happens. Yes.
Oh my gosh, life happens. Yeah.
Just in general, if somebody like burps and farts or whatever, she would get snaps for gas.
Snaps for gas, yeah.
I like that.
So yeah, you just, I mean, the general rule is if it's like there's music or other things, you can just ignore it. If it does go on, then you might have to do like a snaps for gas, just to like let other students know kind of that, like, but never anything. You also kind of have to know the student. One thing you can do if it's smelly is you can't always take care of the smells in a room. If someone has a smell going into the room on them, you need to talk to them before they go in if you catch them. And that's hard. And the best way to do that is to pull them to the side and to relate to them, to acknowledge it's hard for you. So let's say they have body odor, really bad body odor, and you know it's going to be disruptive to anyone near them. And I've had to have this talk actually. And I actually, Austin handled it the best because he had a story from when he was 15 and he had a boss talk to him about his BO. So he was able to tell the person, but you just say, you know, this is hard for me to do because I want you to feel comfortable here and I don't want you to feel bad, but there is, you know, there's some body odor happening. And so, and if you have a story of your own, give it to them. Be like, I know I don't want to embarrass you. I had the same thing happen at one point in my life, blah, blah, blah. And so I totally get it. I want you to know I understand. But it will be disruptive. So could you try to go wash it off? And if it gets better, that's great. And if not, if it's in your clothes, I may just have to ask you to come back for another class. And that's hard. That's real hard. But you have to protect your students. So now if it's, sometimes they sneak past you. And sometimes it's like pot smoke or cigarette smoke smell or strong perfume. Oh my gosh, the perfume people. I'm so sensitive to perfumes and essential oil people. I love you, but you are so rough to be next to for someone who's allergic to lavender in a yoga class. All of this to say, like, people will sneak past you. If they do, then you can do things like, you can't necessarily, you're not going to kick them out of class, but you can, oh, you know, it's hot in here, I'm airing out the room, but everyone gets the cue of like, okay, Amber knows what's going on. She's doing the best she can. There's not a lot she can do, but I can like there is a huge thing about just knowing the teacher is doing the best they can and they're on top of it. Even if they can't really change it, it makes a difference. Okay.
I have something to say about doing co-ed jujitsu classes are awful. And they don't address BO at all. Or cigarette smoke or anything. So I just have to be a millimeter away from this person who smells horrendous, and it's awful. That's my story that I have.
Well, I'm sorry about that. That is horrible. And it's, and you know, the person obviously is not even, you're not aware of it. I'm an ex-smoker. I literally would hate to think of what I went around smelling like. And I thought I was sure I was one of those smokers no one could smell. So I'm sure the person just has no clue, but that doesn't mean it's fun for you. So yeah, you've got to protect your students. I have stuff about be prepared, be on time, all that, you know that, but do it. I want to end on, you do get, actually, I want to go through your questions. And then we'll end with the word. I talked about if you forget, I'm just giving the best answers I can. A lot of this you're gonna just kind of find out on your own. If no one shows up, you don't teach. If one person shows up, you're gonna learn a lot about teaching yoga because you get really good. It can be awkward. It takes more energy in a lot of ways. It's harder in a lot of ways, but you really learn to cue that one person. And then it's just like when you practice teaching now. We talked, I think, a little about emotional energy, sensory overload. I wanted to touch on a bit too. Your own stability and keeping your cup full will help to an extent. Music tends to be the biggest thing as far as sensory overload, and you can really choose your music well. there are certain sounds in like techno-y kind of music that I cannot teach with that going on. It's just like, not techno, like, what do I want to say? Like electronic music, not techno. I'm not going to play techno in a class, but, and it just, there's certain sounds that just, I know will be I won't be able to. So that's the cool thing is once you're teaching, you really can to an extent control your environment. So just know yourself and take good care of yourself in that way.
Yeah. I was thinking more just kind of the situations that we have here where there's just like multiple classes going on with like a wall between them and, you know.
Yeah. Once you're teaching, unless it's Shavasana or really bad, it's usually you're so focused on what you're doing, you don't. Yeah, it's usually okay. Yeah, not always, but usually. And that's too where it's just like, it's never going to be ever perfect. And we also get to talk about students about like, there's people in New York City doing yoga right now. Do you know how loud it is there? Yeah. Like in public spaces in New York City.
Yeah, they're meditating in the park. Are you kidding me? So, you can bring some humor to it too. I think for your students especially can help. And then that helps you feel better about it too. The confidence stuff, I think, has a lot to do with self-talk, ritual, being prepared, being practiced, teaching a lot. Don't get rusty after teacher training. We talked about that in my group. It's easy to get rusty. You're like, I'm going to take 3 weeks because I am so sick of the sequence. And then after 3 weeks, then you become scared to teach and you never teach again. And I'm just saying 3 weeks randomly. For you, it might be 1 week. For someone else, it might be a year until they feel that way. But be aware of that. Medical. Like here, we require first aid and CPR. But you would, let me just say this, if there's a medical emergency, you in the class and you attend to it. Or, you just do what you would do in any situation in life, right? You take care of the person who needs help to the best of your ability and your training. You call 911. Students are, I had someone get a nosebleed in a class. She fell out of crow. And it wasn't my class, but it was a teacher's class. And so you can also do things like this. She had another teacher in class and she just said, can you please go help with this student? So it's just, things do happen. Luckily, knock on wood. It's not often. We talked a little about injuries. If it's something you're really not comfortable teaching to, just simply don't do it, but refer them to someone who can. I hope I got everyone's questions. I want to end with the word. If I missed anything, let me know. Yeah. Oh, how it came. If I let you out at the 2-minute early, not the 7-minute early, I'm already late on the 7-minute early. Okay, I can talk fast. Basically, like we were both yoga. Okay, so in Seattle, I never went to studios because they scared me, and I always went to community practices. And there was a guy who taught donation yoga in a basement of a church, and I used to go there. And his classes would fill up to where like he'd have people down the hall who couldn't even see him. And I used to have daydreams about having a donation-based yoga studio, and at the time I wasn't even a teacher. I don't even know where it came from. It would I'd catch myself daydreaming or seeing a building and being like, oh, that'd be a neat, and just like, where's this coming from? Fast forward, I became a yoga teacher, still could hardly afford to do yoga. And just the idea of donation at the time, one of my teachers did donation yoga through her house and in her house. And it just kept coming up. And then a friend who actually, we have a former business co-owner who moved out of state and left 8.5 years ago, but she was in real estate, and she was like, I found a place that might work for this donation idea you were talking about. And we came and looked at the downstairs, and we were like, well, the community needs it, and we could, even if we don't make a cent, even if like literally no one donates anything, like we can put our money together to cover the cost. Like, because we were teaching almost all the class, like the first year I was teaching 5th grade full-time and teaching 12 classes a week, most of the 6 a.m.s, many of the afternoon classes, many of the week. Yeah. And you wonder how I developed an autoimmune disorder that year. I totally burned my health into the ground, but it was a hard year, but we did it. And our first month, I remember our expenses. I can't believe this was all our expenses were. Like literally we were like, they'll be around $1,800 with whatever rent was back then. It was just the downstairs and utilities. Maybe it was $2,800. That $1,800 doesn't even sound possible, but, and of course we weren't paying ourselves, but like we made it to whatever it was, we made that in donations to the dollar. Oh, I am not kidding you. It was like to the dollar. And I was like, wow, people, maybe this is a sign. I don't know. we never thought it'd be our jobs. It was just from the community needs this. So that's the story. Can we end with the speed round of the word? Okay. I'll start. Grateful. So grateful, so excited. And I'm going to ask, let's see, Erin and then Sarah June, and then we'll go that way from there.
Itchy eyes is all I got.
Fair enough.
Study.
Plan.
Community.
Delight.
Purpose. Sangha. Allergies.
Ooh, that was good.
Gratitude. Confidence. Magic.
Britties.
Improvise.
Improvise. Yay. Okay. Thank you so much. It's such a joy. I will see you Saturday. Have a good evening. Be safe.
Thank you, Amber.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye. Thanks everyone at home. We lost Christina, huh? All right.
She said bye in the chat.
Okay. Thanks.